Pep Guardiola leaving Manchester City isn't just a headline. It's the kind of rumor that changes how everyone reads City's next move, right now. Because once people believe an era is ending, every shortlist, every target, every decision starts to look like a next chapter audition. This is football frenzy. There are fresh reports suggesting Pep Guardiola could leave Manchester City at the end of the season. Pep has a contract that runs longer than that, but top journalists have been saying there's a growing sense inside the game that the partnership may be heading toward its final stretch sooner than expected. Right now, the reporting doesn't always come with a single clear reason, which is why the speculation is everywhere. The simplest explanation people keep circling back to is that Pep has basically done everything possible at City, rebuilt them through multiple cycles, and may feel he's reached the natural endpoint. There's also the idea that he could take a long break, and in modern coaching, sometimes a long break quietly turns into a retirement, at least for a while. We've seen that with other elite managers who look drained after years at the top. At the same time, other credible voices have said a summer 2026 departure is more realistic than an immediate one, and that nothing is guaranteed, because Pep is still locked in on winning trophies right now. So the responsible way to frame it is simple. It's not confirmed, but it's not going away either. As for replacements, one name that keeps coming up is Enzo Maresca, one of Pep's coaching descendants, someone who understands the City structure and the philosophy. The complication is obvious. He's under contract at Chelsea, and if City tried to pull him out, the compensation could be enormous. City are also linked with Roberto De Zerbi, currently at Marseille, a coach Pep has praised for years. De Zerbi is known for giving attackers more freedom and leaning into creativity, while Maresca is more rigid and structure-first. So if this really is Pep's final chapter at City, the question becomes what kind of next era they want. A strict system continuation, or a more flexible version of the same football idea. And with that hanging in the air, City's transfer talk suddenly feels a lot louder too. Chelsea are said to be entering the race for Elliot Anderson from Nottingham Forest, with Bayern and the Manchester clubs also watching. The pitch is simple. Chelsea want another midfielder who can carry the ball, break pressure, and add control. The script claims Anderson's statistical profile stacks up well against players like Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo in ball carrying and certain dribbling metrics, while also holding his own defensively. Whether you buy the exact comparisons or not, it's clear he's being positioned as a serious target. Chelsea are also linked with Antoine Semenyo, and the reporting suggests the player is leaning toward Manchester City. The story goes that City see him as the ideal winger profile, and that Pep personally played a role in the talks, which is always the kind of detail that makes a move feel real. Bournemouth would still have to negotiate, but if a release clause is active, that changes the entire dynamic. If the player wants City and City want the player, these situations tend to move quickly. So if this goes through, City may have just grabbed the most marketable signing of the winter window before anyone else could get there. What happens next? If the Pep noise keeps growing, every signing starts to look like it's being made for the next manager too. Alexander Isak scored again for Liverpool against Tottenham, but it came with a brutal price. He came on, made an immediate impact, and then got injured right in the moment of striking the ball. The contact looked nasty, and the first reactions were the kind that make every fan's stomach drop. Early rumors flew around, including scary ones. But Liverpool's update is that it's an ankle injury with a fibula fracture, and the timeline being discussed is 2 to 3 months. Arne Slot described it as a major disappointment and didn't hide his frustration about the challenge that caused it. Reports also say Mickey van de Ven reached out to apologize afterward, explaining he was trying to block the shot and didn't intend that outcome, which is consistent with how these moments usually happen at full speed. Isak posted to fans as well, basically saying he's devastated, but focused on recovery and supporting the team while he's out. Now Liverpool have a real decision to make. Do they treat this like a short-term storm and cover internally? Or do they move for a forward in January? The names being mentioned include Memphis Depay and Alexander Sorloth, depending on availability, price, and whether a loan is even realistic. Depay would likely be a permanent deal. Sorloth would depend on Atletico's stance and the player situation. So we'll see how aggressive Liverpool get. But losing a key attacker for months is exactly the kind of thing that can force a club into the market. That kind of pressure doesn't just hit in the table, it hits in the noise around stars too. Vinícius Jr. has always played with emotion, and lately that emotion has been colliding with pressure. After Rodri won the Ballon d'Or, Vinícius posted a message that sounded like a promise to come back stronger, and he clearly felt he had been wronged by the outcome. Since then, though, the situation around him has gotten more complicated. Results haven't gone Real's way in key moments. There have been reports of tension around contract demands, and there was talk of friction with the coaching staff earlier in the season, even if other reports suggest things cooled down. The biggest on-field issue is form. The script claims Vinícius is currently on a long goal drought, and when that happens at the Bernabeu, the crowd can get harsh fast. Against Sevilla, he was booed. After the match, fans noticed changes on his social media, including profile and photo choices, and he posted a message that was basically just an ellipsis, which people read as, "I've got something to say, but I'm not saying it yet." One Spanish outlet claims Vinícius took the booing as a sign of lack of support and is now questioning whether he wants to stay long-term, not purely for money, but for how it feels to play there. As for destinations, the same three buckets keep coming up: Saudi interest, occasional PSG noise, and the usual Premier League giants. Right now, it's still talk, and Real Madrid situations can change quickly with one big performance. But the mood around this story is clearly shifting. And while Madrid deal with mood, Milan are dealing with something more basic: squad holes. Milan's winter priorities have been pretty clear. They need help at center back. There were even reports that Massimiliano Allegri personally reached out to a veteran option. But financially, Milan are operating under constraints, especially with Champions League money not in the picture. So they've been linked with alternatives like Joe Gomez and Axel Disasi, including talk of a loan structure where the parent club covers part of the wages. The problem is that nothing has been fully closed yet, despite how urgent the need looks. And then, at the same time, Milan are moving quickly for forwards. According to the script, Niklas Füllkrug has arrived, completed his medical, and is joining on loan with a low buy option in the summer. His recent numbers in England haven't been impressive, but Serie A has a way of giving strikers a second life, especially if the coach specifically wants the profile. Milan are also said to be close to Andrej Kostic from Partizan, with terms reportedly agreed and talks active, around the €5 million range, so the debate writes itself. Milan found a way to fund 2 number 9s, but the center-back situation is still unresolved. Fans will call it questionable planning, and unless the defense gets fixed, the same problems are going to keep repeating, no matter how many strikers arrive. Speaking of problems that repeat, Madrid's defense is starting to sound like a bigger conversation than one position. Real Madrid's defensive rebuild is starting to look like more than just 1 or 2 tweaks. Reports around the club suggest the coaching staff have concerns about fatigue and durability for certain defenders, especially with players being pushed toward heavy match loads. When you're playing 50-ish games across club and country in a year, your body eventually sends a message, and muscle issues tend to stack up. There's also a lot of noise about departures. David Alaba has been linked with a possible exit, which would make sense given how difficult injuries have made his availability. Antonio Rudiger has also been mentioned in the rumor mill, not because of talent, but because top clubs often make ruthless decisions when medical records start piling up. And then there's Dani Carvajal, which is the headline here. The reporting suggests Madrid may not renew, and that Carvajal has been exploring options, including a potential move to Qatar. Whether it happens or not, it's the kind of story that doesn't appear out of nowhere unless something is being discussed behind the scenes. Carvajal's legacy at Real is secure. For years, he was one of the defining right-backs of the modern era, especially in that period when Madrid's fullbacks were basically half defenders, half chance creators. The only issue is the one that gets everyone eventually: the injuries. So if this is really leading toward a goodbye, it would be less about ability and more about time, minutes, and the reality of keeping your body intact at the highest level. And if you want a reality check, nothing hits like being young, talented, and still having to fight for minutes. The next superstar label is never easy to carry, and this season has been a reminder of that for a few young South Americans. Claudio Echeverri flashed from Manchester City at the Club World Cup, but with new signings and competition, the pathway to regular minutes got complicated. The plan was a loan, and the reporting suggests he's now set for another switch, with City recalling him and moving him to Girona. That move comes with a practical issue: non-EU registration slots. If Echeverri arrives, Girona may need to make space, which can force a separate transfer that has nothing to do with performance and everything to do with paperwork. On the Real Madrid side, there's similar logic around minutes. Franco Mastantuono is reportedly considering a short-term exit because he needs consistent playing time to lock down his status and keep momentum. He's not buried, but he's also not the focal point. And at Madrid, very few young attackers get a system built around them. And speaking of loans, Endrick is reportedly heading out too. The script claim here is that Madrid have agreed a 6-month loan to Lyon, with a modest loan fee, no option to buy, wage coverage split, and an appearance-related clause that protects the player's minutes. For Lyon, that's a huge opportunity. For Madrid, it's a calculated risk, because if you're struggling for attacking solutions, loaning out one of your young forwards always raises questions. Now for one of the strangest, wait, what moments of the week? Rafinha just had an absurd season by any normal standard. He was producing goals, assists, and non-stop work off the ball, and by pure output, he had a case to be treated as one of the very top performers. And still, he ends up finishing 5th in the Ballon d'Or voting. If you're Rafinha, that stings. Losing out to someone who powered a Champions League winning run is one thing. But when you feel like you're getting jumped by hype, narratives, and reputation, the frustration hits differently. Then, the FIFA awards came around, which are often marketed as more objective, and it got worse from his perspective. No top prize and not even a spot in the FIFA 11. That's the kind of omission that players remember for years. Even Hansi Flick commented publicly, basically saying he couldn't understand it, and that ignoring Rafinha's impact didn't make sense. Rafinha responded the way a lot of modern stars do. He posted a long series of Instagram stories listing what he'd done and why he felt overlooked. And his family also made it clear they didn't find it funny. And then, yesterday, Barcelona officially announced that Rafinha had retired. For a second, it sounded like the football internet was about to melt, but it turned out the announcement was about Rafinha Alcantara, the former Barca and PSG midfielder, Thiago Alcantara's younger brother, a player who once looked destined for a huge career. As for Rafinha Diaz, he's not going anywhere. He's just collecting receipts. And if he keeps putting up numbers like that, he'll keep forcing the conversation, whether the awards like it or not. And while we're on long-term projects, PSG might be trying something they've rarely done: commit. When Luis Enrique first took the PSG job, a lot of people in France weren't buying it. And honestly, it wasn't a crazy doubt to have. Enrique has never been the easygoing type. He's intense, he's stubborn about his ideas, and he has a reputation for doing things his way, even if it makes people uncomfortable. At Barcelona, it took time for him to get full buy-in from stars, and plenty of observers predicted that the PSG environment would chew him up and spit him out, like it has done to so many coaches before. Instead, he played it smart from day one. He talked about building a tight, family-like culture. He pushed discipline in a club that has often been linked with drama, and he worked hard to communicate better inside the group. The message was clear: this team is going to run, press, and compete, whether you have the ball or not. The early months were not exactly a highlight reel. PSG had stretches where the football felt like pure possession for the sake of possession, and the criticism got loud. Some people called it sterile, some called it boring, and the media relationship never really warmed up. But over time, he adjusted. He loosened the handcuffs, gave more freedom in the final third, and leaned into constant rotations that make PSG harder to read. That's how the current style took shape. And it's a big reason the team looks more fluid now than it did early on. The club leadership has been publicly supportive, and the reporting around PSG is that they want to keep Enrique in place long-term. Some outlets have framed it as a lifetime contract, which is obviously just a phrase, but the idea is a massive extension, possibly something in the range of a very long deal. For PSG, that would be a big statement. Since the takeover era began, the club has often felt like it resets direction every couple of seasons, which is tough for any long-term project. If they truly commit to Enrique, They're basically saying they want stability, identity, and one clear plan for years. And in a club that has spent a lot of time changing the map, picking one road and staying on it might be the biggest win of all. Last one. Not for what happens on the pitch, but for how strange football's second lives can get. Dani Alves has been back in the headlines for reasons that go far beyond football. The script states he was released after time in custody and later acquitted in a case that had been widely covered. And regardless of anyone's opinion, his public reputation has taken a major hit. That kind of situation changes how clubs, sponsors, and football communities respond, even when the legal result is what it is. Since then, reports say he's leaned heavily into religion and has been appearing in evangelical church settings, with social media posts reflecting that shift. And now, there's an unexpected football angle. According to Globo, Alves has been negotiating to buy a club in Portugal's lower divisions, with the idea of helping stabilize it, potentially taking a role that blends ownership, management, and maybe even involvement around the squad. The script compares it to former players who transition into sporting leadership, pointing to examples of smart club building and how quickly a competent sporting director can change an organization's direction. Whether Alves' plan becomes real or stays as a headline, it's another reminder that football never runs out of surprising second chapters. That's it. Thanks for watching, and thanks for being here. Enjoy your meal, take care of yourself, and Joga Bonito. If you want more of this format, drop a like and tell me which story you want us to go deeper on next.